welcome to the Bliss Tonic YouTube channel. I'm your host, Michelle Anthony, providing you with information, support, validation, and practices on your spiritual journey. So before we get into today's topic of what it's been like doing Akashic readings, please like and subscribe to this video. It just boosts YouTube's algorithm so more people like you can find this information and have access to these practices. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Akashic records comes from this word Akasha, which is in Sanskrit and it means ether. And so you can translate that also to space, but it is not space. The Akashic Records is a collection, a storehouse of the energetic imprint that your soul has made, will make, and is making in all of existence. So it's a compilation of not only your soul's individual journey, the past lives, where you are now, and various potentialities based on your free will decisions. But it is the storehouse of all information, all experiences, past, present, and future. So it is not necessarily a place that we go to, but rather a dimension of information that we all have access to. And I have plenty more videos coming in that topic as well. So first of all, it's not something that I have unique access to. It's not something that you don't have access to for yourself and for other people. But it is something that can have some prerequisites as far as becoming a more clear channel and just the ability to and the opportunity to be able to practice on other people and get validation from your skills, which helps eliminate a lot of the doubt, which is a huge hindrance on this path. Okay, so that's the Akashic Records, and how I've been doing readings is having people send in 3 to 6 questions and their full legal name, which is how I have access to their records. I open it with a prayer, and when I'm done with the reading, I close the records. And it's just a beautiful way to also energetically kind of complete me being in another person's energy to read it, and to keep my energetic self-sovereignty in place and just feeling good in my body as I do these readings. So I just started 2 weeks ago offering these readings. Of course, I've done other kind of readings in intuitive arts for the past decade, which there's going to be at least 1, probably 2 videos coming out shortly, where I talk about my spiritual journey some 10, 11 now years ago, what that was like. And so look forward to that on the YouTube channel. Okay, so I put it out there that I'm offering these sessions by donation, and I did 22 sessions. And in those 2 weeks, and 18 of them were in this past week. And so I just learned so much, and it's really interesting the way the information came through really differently than when I've done readings using oracle cards. I have my go-to fairy oracle deck that I love so much, and the information just came through really differently, really clearly. And the information that came through was very verifiable. So the feedback I got was really interesting. And I'm going to share a couple of the highlights about how those readings went and what kind of information came through and how it came through. Okay. So the first one is that it was extremely different for everybody. So each person had a completely different experience. And sometimes when I do readings using oracle cards, I'll get people who have like the same cards will pop up, or a theme will start to emerge if I do several readings in a day, obviously with variation, but this was not the case getting into the Akashic records. So I thought that was really interesting. So here's a little bit more specifically about that and how everybody's was different. So all of the clairs were utilized in this process of not only receiving information, was it really different, but how I was interpreting it and how I was being guided to interpret it. So for some people, I had a feeling come through. So one person specifically had a question. I'm just keeping all of the details really vague and obviously no names, but one person had a question specifically about a house, a building, whatever, and I went into it, and it was anxiety, and really intense like anxiety came through, and it ended up being like that was that person's exact experience, and it wasn't in an actual house. So that's kind of a really cool way that feeling came through. Sometimes I had beings come through telepathically. Sometimes I had beings come through where it was a direct channel, and it wasn't even like I was speaking. They were speaking through me and saying like, we are doing this and stuff like that. And sometimes it was like a telepathic communication, and then I would relay that information. And sometimes I would see an image, like a really clear image of whatever various things came through that were kind of really really random. Was like, okay, I don't know, but this is what I'm seeing. And I found that in this 2 weeks, which has been so powerful, so transformative for me, because of the validation I got, where I would almost like put a disclaimer before I gave information of like, okay, I know this sounds weird, or it might not make sense, or I don't even know if your father is dead, but he's here coming through to me. So there was like a lot of like scary moments when I experienced some doubt surrounding like, this may not make sense to you, but this information is coming through. So I used a lot of disclaimers, and every time I used a disclaimer for this really clear information that was coming through to me, but I had an immediate doubt, I was like, okay, now just say it. And every time I received validation surrounding that. So I thought that was really cool. So all of the different clairs, and then again, hearing telepathic communication in some ways where it was very clear, like I wanted them to speak through me, because sometimes it's like easier than trying to listen and then like remember everything that they're saying and then send it out to the person. But there was these one beings who wouldn't do it. And I was like, all right, they're just wanting to communicate telepathically with me and they don't want to work through me. Versus sometimes, they would just speak through me, and which is really nice because I feel like it's a lot less work, but whatever, The books. Okay, so this was really interesting, and something that I started to get into more later in the week, and then later in the readings, and it was really helpful. So we have in the records various books of information, basically, and you can think about it in a visualization of like a physical book, right? Which visualization really helps us, and imagination is a really great way that we can start to actually access some deeper psychic abilities. And it's something that sometimes we can have doubt around, but it really is a valuable skill. Okay, so this information can be categorized into different books. And so sometimes the books were not accessible to me, and even some books were locked up and like hesitated to offer them. So the keepers of the books, the library, the information, the masters and love past loved ones and teachers that we have on the other side, which really it's not the other side, it's all here and it's all now. But we have various categories. So, say somebody had a question about their something they thought was their purpose or whatever. And so I could look at this thing and ask for the information or ask for the book, and it would be really interesting which book it was in, which then I could take that book to another room and specifically in that book find the word, put my hand on it, and receive either visual cues, auditory cues, just more information surrounding what it was like. So it was really interesting, say that somebody had a question about, I really want to do this, is this part of my purpose? And it could be in the career book. It could be in the life's purpose book. It could be in the service book. So it's interesting in which book that question will be answered. And that has actually been really interesting along the way. And then, when I access the question, one of the ways that I was able to do that is to then find maybe a keyword and find the page where that keyword is in that specific book. But already there's information coming through, specifically how I accessed that book, what it looks like, which book it is. All of that is information that kind of just adds to the reading. Okay. Who comes through? So this was really interesting. Whenever I had a loved one who has passed in the physical realm and now is in the spiritual realm, or a specific guide to that person, whenever I had somebody like that come through, they came through first. So I thought that was really interesting. Before I even got into the questions, they would be there first trying to get my attention. And usually I saw them, in somewhere surrounding me, either up here or back here. I physically saw a light. And then for some of them, it formed into a really specific visualization of a person, the person that I was like, I don't know, is this person passed, but they're saying they're your dad, but I don't know. And I was really in anxiety about saying this and and then when you're interpreting it, it's well, it could be grandfather, it could be whatever. But it ended up being correct in that case. So, but it was waiting for validation on that was really important for me too, to be okay, I've channeled loved ones before, but I always knew that they had passed and I knew the person and I perhaps had some personal narratives to go off of what they're like. And when you hear the messages oh, we're proud of you, we love you, right? Doesn't that kind of sound like bullshit? When somebody I know this person is dead in the physical world, and their spirit is telling me they love you, they're proud of you, right? So I feel that's the stereotypical, I don't know, people taking advantage of people in the spiritual world. And it's something that I'm extremely careful of, and why I really, for a long time, have been very feet in the ground, grounded, heavily sinking into doubt. So I've been on a whole spiritual journey, which I'm going to share again in another video. So who comes through? So I get the loved ones come through first. Their energy is different every time. And who passes on the information? A lot of times I had, however you want to call them, aliens, ETs, extraterrestrials. We had a lot of those. Maybe out of 22, I don't know, 3 to 5, I don't really know, 3 to 5 people had really specific aliens coming through to guide them and to just let them know of their celestial roots, and basically to open up to what's possible. So yeah, definitely I love working with my ETs. I think that their wisdom is so profound, and I'm gonna get more into the alien stuff in another video, because it's I've actually been working with aliens since probably 2011 or 2012. That will be in my story about my time living in Canada. Okay. So aliens have come through, sometimes ancestors have come through, spirit guides, and then I always find that the keepers of the books, of the library, of the information, we associate it with a physical book library, and it's not always like that. Sometimes it can help to visualize that. But that's, again, just kind of bringing our human understanding of a not human experience, not necessarily, and not the part of us that's just animal human. Who else came through? Yeah, so the keepers of the books always came through really vague. And what was really important actually was that I didn't really need to know the names of anybody, the names of certain guides, the names of the keepers, the names weren't really important. And this is a message that came through around that, was that sometimes when we have a name, it, we're bringing an energy that's not necessarily there. It can help us get to know them, but perhaps they just chose a name. Perhaps it was a name from one of their lifetimes, right? But that's not who they are. So when we have a concept, especially a spiritual concept, and we try to use our language, which puts things in boxes to understand and put meaning into this concept, in a way, I'm not saying that it lowers the vibration, but we just grasp onto it. And the whole point of this is to not grasp and to start to just receive information, not to grasp at the information, but to integrate and surrender. And really the reason I'm doing all of this is because I know that these kinds of readings and accessing this wisdom elevates the consciousness of not only me having this really beautiful opportunity to offer this and sit in that meditative channeling state for people, but for whoever's receiving this can feel the vibration of the space that I'm in. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so specific words. This was really interesting. I had maybe about 5 people, or 6, I don't really know, specifically say that a specific word I used was important. And some of them, it was I'm being called to say this specific word. And that was, at least for the people who reached out to me surrounding that was really nice to get that validation that that word was important in some way in the play of their lifetime here, that it made sense. So specific words that I was called to use. Yeah. What else was it gonna say? So yeah, how they come through. Some would want to channel and some would want to communicate telepathically. So what was really cool and completely unexpected, and it was never a telepathic experience. Well, actually one time it was. Usually it's a channeling experience instead of a telepathic experience, but sometimes they would provide a healing for the recipient of this reading. And because linear time does not exist, especially when we're talking about in the space and the records, right? Because in this human world, it does exist. We have to be somewhere at a certain time. We have responsibilities. And so in some ways it does exist. And also it's not as linear as it is perceived to us in our human experience. And so as I was doing a voice recording, knowing that the person isn't on the other end listening to this in the now moment, sometimes they would offer healing, but one time they attuned my physical voice to carry a healing frequency, which was really interesting. I kept getting like told to like, no, just wait a minute, and then we're gonna do the guided healing. So they would always let me know what they were working on so the person could direct their awareness there. And I thought that was pretty cool. So some of them were kind of like a guided meditation where they would be visualizing something happening. Some of them, the healings that took place were like, I would be describing what these beings were doing, specifically healing. You can think about it like giving Reiki from these 5D or non-physical beings, what we call like from the other side. So these non-physical beings who I was communicating with through the Akashic records would be telling me what they're doing. And so they're doing the healing and I'm receiving the information. Like now they're offering this violet light into this space. Now they're working on this. And in sometimes I was given information that I had no clue. I was like, okay, just say it, because you know, when I get specific information like that it's like I could be wrong, right? The doubt creeps in. And so a beautiful learning for me was to just say it. Like it's really what is beautiful part of the prayer when you're opening the records is that you're asking that all forms of ego and self-centeredness, like just get out of the way. And that's so helpful because it really is, it's not about me being right? It's about what I get to offer, the healing experience of not only receiving validation and information and guidance, but also this healing energy that they offer. And not everybody got it. And it was very spontaneous. It was like, oh, they're offering you this healing now. And so I always thought that was really cool. Some of them were really emotional and powerful for me. Like one of the information I got was like specifically in regards to like a trauma, like an experience that happened in the 3D physical world, and they offered a healing. And these a very specific. They were telling me what they were doing, and so I was just saying, and now they're working on this part of your brain. And I was like, well, I don't know what, should I say what part of the brain they're working on? Because I don't know the brain that well. And I ended up saying it. And then afterwards I was like, I'm going to look it up. Like, what is that part of the brain associated with? And it was the amygdala, specifically having to do with like memory and kind of experiences that make an imprint in our life. And that they were specifically bringing healing light energy to that part of the brain. So super cool. Yeah, and I had a couple people who I could sense an unwanted energy around them, which was interesting. And then I don't know if it was channeled information, but I have had plenty of experiences working with negative entities. And so it's not fun, and you can tell after they're gone the energy that you were in, but sometimes it's hard to like acknowledge where you are, especially because like there's a lot of fear surrounding, there being a negative entity around, attached to you, whatever. But I do believe that in some way we call in those experiences energetically for either our own learning or, we're in a vibrational match with that being. And so, but it kind of like then keeps us where we are. And it can be difficult to accumulate enough energy to basically raise your vibration so you're no longer a match with that energy. We're gonna get into a whole nother video about entities as well. Comment if this is interesting to you, if there's any subject you want me to cover. This has been on my 22 practice Akashic record readings. It's been really fun sharing this information with you. Again, if you haven't already, leave a comment, like, or subscribe to the Bliss Tonic YouTube channel. Thanks for coming.